Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this EBRA cluster interview series. EBRA is, as you know, the name of a project called the European Brain Research Area Project. It is an EU-funded project which comes to an end at the end of the year. As part of the project, a series of clusters were formed, gathering researchers, physicians, scientists, and other stakeholders together in order to focus and deep dive into specific brain priorities and brain topics. Today, we will be discussing the BRAINFOOD Cluster. The BRAINFOOD Cluster, as its name indicates, was meant to better understand the links and the relationships between nutrition and brain health, but also nutrition and brain diseases and disorders. And this is what we're going to be talking about today with two coordinators of the project. Before I introduce them to you, let me just introduce myself. I'll be your host today. My name is Franz Nivelle. I'm the Chief Communications Officer of eBrains. eBrains is a brain research infrastructure created by the Human Brain Project, and we are part of the EBRA project. So joining me today, we're going to have Professor Roger Adam from the Utrecht Brain Center, and Professor Susan Dixon from the University of Gothenburg. So welcome, Roger and Susan, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, great to see you and great to have you with us today. The BRAINFOOD Cluster was a very nice effort within the EBRA project. And before we get into, the heart of the matter, can you tell us a little bit about who was part of that cluster and what the purpose of such a cluster was? And maybe Roger, we'll start with you.
Yes. So it all started with the nutrition network of ECMP. So ECMP is a scientific society that brings together neurologists, psychiatrists, and neuroscientists in order to improve, to do science to improve brain health, in fact. And within that cluster, we realized that nutrition is really important to improve brain health. And we asked ourselves, so why is the potential not utilized? And the reason, of course, is that more research needs to be done in order to, and also needs to be communicated to the public domain. And then this opportunity came of the EBRA clusters, where we applied for the BRAINFOOD cluster to really team up with industry and other stakeholders, such as patient organizations, to reach out to policy and to plea for more funding for this area.
Well, thank you very much. So it was very interdisciplinary, if I understand correctly. And Susan, I mean, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about the value of gathering, such a diverse, actually, group of stakeholders together in order to discuss that?
For sure. So, people like me, I'm a basic researcher. I work in a lab, I do experiments, and somewhere out there are the people that I need to interact with. First of all, the clinicians who are asking the fundamental questions about how nutrition is really impacting on brain health. So, and then you have other clinicians who actually have the structure for implementing it. And these two groups need to speak to each other. And then you have also, of course, the stakeholders, and there are many, very many aspects of the food industry, of course. And we have the patients, the people who tell us, that we really need to understand how nutrients can benefit my health, and what do I do? Who can I tell this message to impact? And last but absolutely not least, we have the politicians and the policymakers, because they are the ones that eventually can bring about change in order to help us with our objectives, which is to improve research in this field. I mean, it's only by doing research we can give our message but by getting the evidence together, the fundamental basic evidence together, as scientists, as a research community involving the clinicians, all the stakeholders, all these people, then we can make an impact.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, very important to bring, the network together. Now, talking about evidence and going a little bit into, the science of nutrition and the connection with brain health. What evidence do we have today about, the impact of nutrition on brain health? What can we already use today? Roger, maybe?
Yes, so of course, this is variable. In some areas, we clearly see the value of food for health. For instance, epileptic children, if you provide them with ketogenic diets, this really helps them to control their seizures. And also the Mediterranean diet, there's overwhelming evidence that has an impact for those people that suffer from anxiety disorders and depression. And of course, it's well known that vitamins like vitamin B12 deficiency contributes to development of anxiety disorders and mood swings and so on. But in other areas, it's less clear, and there we're lacking research. And also the communication around what healthy food is not always clear. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions which are not backed up with proper solid science. And that makes it difficult for the patient, for instance, to understand what they should believe, because there's so much information around there, and it's difficult to judge what is really valuable and what is true and what is just a rumor. And therefore we need more research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so would you consider future research in nutrition following the path that drug clinical development would follow? Susan, what's your opinion on this?
Well, it's similar but very different in many ways. So you can't really treat food like a drug. I mean, that would be a mistake, and it's perhaps the mistake that all of us, including policymakers, might think that, if you just find out a little bit about how a nutrient or several nutrients act, then that's what you need to know in order to make the big breakthrough with a new treatment based on nutrition. But the reality is that nutrition is a very complex, it's a whole field in its own right. I mean, we know about certain ingredients. Roger is giving some examples with vitamins, and I guess you could add on some things like omega-3 and other things that we know are doing good things to our brain health. But for many of those, we don't really know where in the brain they're acting specifically, which nerve cells, which pathways, and if they do, what then? What happens next to improve our brain health? So there's enormous gaps. But whereas we know that there are beneficial effects, we don't know where those beneficial effects are occurring. And there are implications of that, of course, for the reimbursement of costs for the research. So, of course, with the development of a pharmaceutical drug, you expect reimbursement from the pharmaceutical industry. Nobody would question that. But with the nutrients, it's a very different model. And that's something that we've learned in the BRAINFOOD Cluster from our partners in the food industry, that, in fact, it's not possible for them to fund large clinical trials, massive investigations, basic studies showing mechanism and results, because there are so many nutrients. And by the way, this is a changing goal, because nutrition is always changing. We're learning new things all the time. We're learning more about different diets. And it's very much a changing platform. And also, you can't patent a food combination as a therapy, unlike in the pharmaceutical industry with a drug. So it's a very different model. So again, I think that the public sector needs to be funding this research, and we can't look to the food industry for it.
Yeah, for the food industry, there's no return of investment. Huh?
No, absolutely. But precisely, I mean, are they still motivated to be part of this? I mean, they were part of your cluster. So what have you found? You know, as a from regarding the food industry, are they willing? Are they saying, well, we need some return? What is the and of course we will generalize a little bit here, but based on your experience, where did you see the attitude of the food industry in this issue?
I think they're very positive. They wanna use every nutrient that really has an impact. But the problem is a bit that it's too difficult it's not impossible for them to invest and protect it. So that is the problem. The industry certainly wants to contribute to develop, to for instance, formula food and improve it and do the best they can for elderly to stop cognitive decline and so on. But the thing a bit is to test these nutrients and foods. That is really something which is very expensive, and it's not really possible to patent it. So that makes it really hard. So they also say only in collaboration with policymakers and with universities, you know, it's our shared responsibility. And that's what we learned in the BRAINFOOD Cluster. We can only achieve this if the public domain also contributes, and that is something that we like to address the policymakers with.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Okay, so the importance of public funding and public institutions stepping in, maybe in association with private. So public-private collaboration could definitely be an area to focus on. But that's very interesting to understand this challenge, which is completely different from as you explained, from the pure pharmaceuticals challenge. Are there specific areas in which you think that nutrition could play a potential major role and maybe a priority focus in regarding nutrition and brain health? Is there something very specific that you think we should prioritize? And maybe Susan, if you want to.
It's quite difficult for us to make priorities, really, because you know we have maybe knowledge in very specific areas. But one thing that we learned actually from a representative in our cluster from the food industry is that, and also from other members, is that there are some critical periods that seem to be especially important for brain development, and also times when diets could impact. And one, of course, is the early life that we've already mentioned. Where you know brain development is enormous during the first 2-3 years of life, and you know it's a very special period, and we know for sure that the composition of the diet during this period impacts. So that's one area to really give emphasis to. There are other vulnerable periods for nutritional health, and it's been mentioned that, for example, late teenagers can enter a bad dietary regime, eating a lot of fast foods and things which are giving poor nutrition, and that's of course carries with it detrimental effects on brain health, well, all metabolic health also for that matter. And then of course there's the middle age and the weight gain, menopause for women. And then we have, of course, the elderly, and to protect against brain loss of function in the elderly. I mean, I mean, we would wonder whether nutrition could really be used for neurodegenerative diseases, but at least it could protect brain health and help with cognitive function longer. So in a way, what I've just said is there's almost no point in life when it wouldn't be important to prioritize some effort into increasing our understanding.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and across the life span. There seems to be different needs and different focuses. Roger, do you want to add anything to this, or I mean, is there anything specific you would like to add?
Well, perhaps that so you can look at it from two sides. Huh? So the Western diet is quite unhealthy because it lacks a lot of micronutrients. So you may miss out on, for instance, certain vitamins, and that is, of course, then having a negative effect on health. And on the other side, we know that indeed certain nutrients are really necessary for normal development. So you need, and they can contribute to it. So food has the good thing and the bad thing. So the bad thing is of course a too uniform diet where you just eat foods that are, for instance, very high in carbohydrates, for instance, like the Western style diet. But then at the same time, if you eat healthy and you have a variety of foods, then you don't miss out on many of the micronutrients. And this is in particular important for those that are vulnerable.
Yes, thank you very much. Now that the cluster work is over, I mean, what are you going to do, in order to make sure that the messages that you want to convey, that they are spread out and distributed? Of course, there is this interview, but beyond this, I mean, are there any other plans? What are the next steps?
Well, we've been rather involved in writing papers, actually. The first paper that we wrote some years ago was more part of the ECNP Nutrition Network, which was orientated towards finding out where are we with nutrition and brain health, what does the evidence show, and where are the gaps in the knowledge. And now, as a subsequent follow-up, we've had one which is a new paper which was much more orientated towards policy to explain what needs to be done. And in fact, now at the end of the cluster, we're going to write yet one more article based on our EBRA cluster experience, which is really giving very specific points with the help of people that are very engaged in policy. For example, the European Brain Council, ILSI Europe, and other scientists who are involved in disseminating and engaging policymakers. So we have quite a good group. We have a strength of people. And again, we want to work together on some new written material. But we also plan to make things like a flyer and some smaller, well-digestible material that we could very clearly indicate where we're at to policymakers especially. And I think this would benefit everybody in the community, including even many stakeholders who also are maybe grappling with some of the issues that we faced as scientists, trying to figure out what is the problem. And we need to understand that before we can fix it.
Absolutely. Yes.
And of course, the brain food cluster has come to kind of an end, but the nutrition network of ECNP will remain. Okay. And attached to this, the Congress in October, there will be a day where we on nutritional psychiatry, where we invite psychiatrists that are interested to learn more about nutrition and brain health, in particular for psychiatric patients. So we have a whole day reaching out to them with teaching what can be done already now with regards to healthy food.
Okay, brilliant. There's also, the EBRA final conference on the 11th of October, in which, your work and the work of the other clusters will be highlighted. And we hope that, many policymakers will join us on that event, so that it's another, another opportunity to convey the message. So, well, listen, thank you very, very much for this. I think this is a fascinating topic. I think there is, as you say, a lot of potential for future discoveries. But definitely, more funding needed and probably more public funding in order to make sure that this goes in and progresses in the right direction. So thank you very, very much. We are looking forward to the papers that will be published. So keep us posted, and we'll make sure that we relay this through the various channels of EBRA. So thank you very, very much. Everybody, thank you for listening to this cluster interview. We'll be back with another one very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.